What happens when the cruelest thing your ex ever said is whispered in a crowded room, and the most dangerous man in the city hears every word? Harper Monroe came to the Magnolia Charity Ball in New Orleans, wearing a sapphire gown and a smile she had practiced in the mirror. She wasn't there for love. She was there to save her career, prove her worth, and survive one more room full of people who judged women before they knew them. Then Ethan Caldwell leaned close and called her too big to love. He thought he had broken her quietly. But across the ballroom, Roman Hawthorne, the king of the New Orleans underworld, lowered his bourbon and looked at Ethan like a man already marked. Stay with this story, because this isn't just about revenge. It's about power, self-worth, and the night a woman stopped shrinking. Like the video and comment where you're watching from. Before Roman Hawthorne ever lowered that glass of bourbon, before his eyes found Ethan Caldwell across the ballroom, Harper Monroe had spent almost an hour convincing herself she belonged in that room. It started in her apartment above a quiet street in the Garden District where the live oaks leaned over the road like old women keeping secrets. Rain had washed the sidewalks clean that afternoon, leaving the air heavy with the smell of wet stone jasmine and the Mississippi River drifting somewhere beyond the rooftops. Harper stood barefoot in front of her bedroom mirror, wearing nothing but a silk robe and a look she hated seeing on herself. Uncertainty. On the bed behind her, 3 dresses lay in a sad little pile. Black navy charcoal. Safe colors. Quiet colors. Colors designed for a woman trying not to give anyone a reason to look twice. The sapphire gown hung from the closet door. It was too beautiful to ignore and too honest to feel safe. The fabric caught the soft yellow light from her bedside lamp and shimmered like deep water. It was cut with a sweetheart neckline, a fitted waist, and a long skirt that flowed over the hips instead of fighting them. It did not hide her body, it framed it. That was the problem. Harper lifted the gown from the hanger and held it against herself. In the mirror, she saw the woman she could be if she trusted her own reflection. Full hips, soft stomach, strong arms, brown skin warmed by the room light, dark curls pinned loosely at the crown of her head with a few stubborn pieces falling near her cheeks. She looked beautiful. Then an older voice slid through her memory like a knife under silk. You should wear something darker. Blue makes you look wider. Harper closed her eyes. Her phone buzzed on the dresser before the thought could finish cutting her. She picked it up and tapped the screen. Tessa. I'm having a crisis. Her best friend's voice filled the room, bright, sharp, and already impatient. Do not tell me you are wearing the black dress. Harper looked toward the pile on the bed. I did not say that. You paused, which means you looked at it. I have a very expressive silence. You have a very predictable fear response. Wear the blue one. Harper turned back to the mirror and pressed the sapphire gown against her body again. It is a lot. You are a lot. That is not an insult. Harper let out a small laugh, but it broke before it became real. People are going to stare. Good, Tessa said. They have eyes. Let them finally do something useful. Harper smiled despite herself. That was Tessa Reed, loyal as a guard dog dressed like a fashion editor and allergic to letting Harper disappear. Tessa had worked beside Harper at Bennett and Vale Communications for 6 years. They had survived nightmare clients, drunk politicians, one mayoral scandal involving a yacht and a hotel heiress, who cried for 3 hours because a journalist called her charity work performative. In every room where Harper softened the truth, Tessa sharpened it. Tonight, they needed both. The Magnolia Charity Ball was not just a party. It was the kind of event that made careers move without anyone admitting a business conversation had happened. The St. Celeste Hotel had hosted the ball for decades, and every year the city's most polished families arrived beneath chandeliers to sip champagne, praise generosity, and quietly decide who mattered. This year, the Whitaker Foundation was attending. The Whitakers owned hotels from New Orleans to Charleston, old brick buildings with brass elevators, rooftop bars, velvet lobbies, and ghosts no one could prove were fake. They were searching for a new public relations firm after their previous agency mishandled a lawsuit, 3 staff resignations, and an ugly viral video filmed in a kitchen basement. Bennett and Vale wanted that account. Harper wanted it more. Landing the Whitaker Foundation could make her partner by spring, not assistant partner, not almost partner, not the woman who did the work while older men took the handshake. Partner. She had written the crisis pitch herself. She had built the strategy. She knew the Whitakers needed more than damage control. They needed someone who understood reputation as a living thing, something that could be bruised, dressed, starved, revived, and taught to breathe again. Harper understood that better than anyone. Maybe too well. "You still there?" Tessa asked. Harper blinked. "Yes." "Put on the dress." Harper looked at herself again. "I keep hearing him." The line went quiet. Tessa did not ask who. They both knew. Ethan Caldwell had been gone for 10 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days. Not that Harper was counting because she missed him. She counted because healing sometimes needed a calendar. She counted because every week without him was proof that she had not died from the absence of someone who once convinced her she could not survive being unwanted. Tessa's voice softened. "Harper, I know. No. You do not get to know quietly tonight. You get to hear it. Ethan was cruel because it gave him control, not because he was right." Harper swallowed and brushed her thumb along the gown's smooth fabric. He knew exactly where to hit. Because you handed him a map when you loved him. That landed gently but deep. Harper turned away from the mirror and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped beneath her. For a moment, she was not in her apartment anymore. She was in a restaurant 2 years earlier, sitting across from Ethan Caldwell under lights that made everyone look expensive. It had been their 3rd anniversary. She remembered the white tablecloth, the candle between them, the tiny gold menu with no prices printed on it. Ethan had worn a navy suit and the smile that once made her feel chosen. The waiter set down warm bread with whipped butter. Harper reached for a piece. Ethan's hand covered her wrist. Not hard, not violent, that would have been easier to name. He smiled. "Do you really need that?" Harper had stared at him confused. "I skipped lunch. I'm just thinking about the engagement photos next month." He said it with such care that anyone watching would have thought he loved her enough to help. So Harper withdrew her hand. She drank water until the hunger passed. Another memory rose before she could stop it. Her standing in front of a mirror at a boutique on Magazine Street, wearing a red dress that made her feel like music. Ethan sat in the velvet chair behind her, scrolling through emails. She turned slowly. "What do you think?" He looked up, paused, and tilted his head. "That is brave." At first, she thought it was praise. Then he added, "Maybe something with more structure." "You photograph better when there is less to notice." The saleswoman looked away. Harper smiled because shame had already taught her manners. Another memory, rain against Ethan's car windows after a dinner with his colleagues. Harper had spent the entire evening charming men who underestimated her and women who inspected her plate. She thought she had done well. Ethan drove in silence until they reached the bridge. Then he sighed. "You have to stop overcompensating." Harper looked at him. "What? You talk too much when you are nervous. People can tell." "I was making conversation. You were performing. There is a difference." She stared out at the wet road. He reached over and squeezed her knee. "I love you, Harp. I do. But most men would not be this patient." That was how he did it. Not with fists. With sentences that sounded like concern until they were already under her skin. By the time he left her for Madison Lane, a wellness influencer with pale hair, Pilates abs, and a ring light in every room, Harper no longer knew how to look in a mirror without bracing for a verdict. The breakup had not destroyed her all at once. It had emptied her in layers. First came the shock, then the humiliation, then the strange, shameful grief of missing someone who had hurt her more often than he had held her. Worst of all was the voice he left behind. It lived in dressing rooms, restaurant menus, photos, elevators with mirrored walls. It spoke when she reached for dessert. It whispered when she laughed too loud. It asked who she thought she was when she dressed like a woman who wanted to be seen. Tonight, that voice wanted the black dress. Harper stood. "No," she whispered. On the phone, Tessa went still. "What did you say?" "Not to you." Harper walked to the mirror, pulled off her robe, and stepped into the sapphire gown before courage had time to run. The zipper caught halfway. She tugged once and cursed under her breath. "That dress giving you trouble?" Tessa asked. "No, liar. It is a structural negotiation. Want me to come over?" Harper, inhaled, reached behind her and pulled again. The zipper slid up with a soft, final sound. The gown settled around her. For a heartbeat, the room disappeared. The woman in the mirror looked like she had walked out of a storm with pearls in her ears and secrets in her mouth. Harper touched the bodice, then her waist, then the curve of her hip beneath the fabric. The dress did not make her smaller. It made the lie smaller. "Tessa," she said quietly. "Yes, I'm wearing the blue one." "I know," Tessa said. "I felt the city improve." Harper laughed then. A real laugh this time. She finished getting ready with the careful discipline of a woman preparing for battle. Gold earrings, soft makeup, a deep berry lipstick she almost wiped off twice and then forced herself to leave alone. She pinned her curls loosely, letting them frame her face instead of pulling them tight. At 7:30, the car from Bennett and Vale arrived. Harper took one last look around her apartment before leaving. The rejected dresses remained on the bed like old habits she had decided not to wear. Outside New Orleans glistened. The driver took St. Charles Avenue toward the French Quarter, passing mansions with iron balconies and gas lamps burning behind rain-spotted glass. Streetcars rolled slowly along the tracks. Music spilled from bars in warm fragments. Trumpet, bass, laughter. A woman singing like her heart had survived worse than love. Harper watched the city move past her window and tried to steady her breathing. She had worked difficult rooms before. She had walked into press conferences where reporters smelled blood. She had stood beside clients who lied badly and wives who smiled through public betrayal. She had cleaned up scandals that should have ended careers. A ballroom should have been easy. But a ballroom full of beautiful people could still make a woman feel 16 again, standing alone at the edge of a school dance wondering who had given everyone else the instructions for being wanted. Her phone buzzed. A text from Tessa. "I'm already inside. The shrimp tower is aggressive. You look amazing. Do not argue with facts." Harper smiled. The St. Celeste Hotel rose ahead pale and grand beneath the evening sky. Its entrance glowed with lantern light. Valets moved quickly beneath black umbrellas. Women in satin stepped out of town cars. Men adjusted cufflinks, checked watches, kissed cheeks, and pretended not to measure one another's net worth. Harper's car stopped at the curb. For 2 seconds, she did not move. The driver opened her door, noise rushed in, rain on pavement, camera shutters, jazz from somewhere inside the hotel, the murmur of names being recognized and ignored. Harper placed one heel on the ground, then the other. A few heads turned. She felt it like heat. Her first instinct was to lower her chin. Instead, she remembered Tessa's voice. Let them. So Harper stepped beneath the awning and walked into the St. Celeste. The lobby smelled of lilies, polished wood, and old money. Marble floors reflected the chandelier light. A wide staircase curved upward toward the ballroom where music floated down like an invitation and a warning. Tessa waited near the check-in table in a black satin dress and gold heels holding 2 glasses of champagne. When she saw Harper, her mouth opened. Then she smiled slowly. "Well," Tessa said, handing Harper a glass. "That dress did not come to participate. That dress came to collect debts." Harper took the champagne. "Do not make me laugh. I'm trying to look composed. You look expensive and emotionally unavailable. Perfect for the room." Harper glanced toward the staircase. "Is Whitaker here?" "Margaret Whitaker arrived 10 minutes ago. Her son is by the donor wall pretending he understands art. The foundation director is somewhere near the silent auction judging everyone's posture." "Good," Tessa leaned in. "Also, Madison Lane is here." Harper's hand tightened around the glass. The champagne trembled once. Tessa noticed but did not soften too much. She knew Harper hated pity. Ethan Harper asked, "Not yet." The answer did not comfort her. Harper looked up the stairs. Of course they would come. "These are their people." "These are not their people," Tessa said. "They are people with money and dental veneers. Do not grant them mythology." Harper exhaled. "You always know what to say. I charge for it during business hours." They climbed the stairs together. The ballroom opened in front of them like a jewel box. Crystal chandeliers hung from painted ceilings. Round tables were dressed in white linen and magnolia centerpieces. A jazz quartet played near the balcony doors. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and oysters. Beyond tall windows, the city shimmered through a veil of rain. Harper's professional mind took over before fear could. She clocked the room. Margaret Whitaker, near the auction table, silver hair swept into a smooth knot emerald necklace at her throat. Her son, Graham Whitaker, laughing too loudly beside a sculptor. City council members near the bar. 2 reporters from society magazines. Donors clustered by wealth influence and the old, invisible rules of Southern power. Harper adjusted her expression into something warm and calm. "Ready?" Tessa asked. "No. Good enough." They moved. For the first 20 minutes, Harper became the woman everyone at Bennett and Vale relied on. She greeted Margaret Whitaker with grace, complimented the Foundation's literacy initiative, and asked a question about rural library funding that made Margaret's eyes sharpen with interest. Most people praised the Whitakers. Harper made them feel understood. That was different. Graham Whitaker joined the conversation and made a lazy joke about crisis communications being public, lying with better stationery. Harper smiled. Sometimes. But the best crisis work is not making a bad story sound good. It is finding the truth your audience can still believe. Margaret looked at her for a long second. Then she said, "That is the first intelligent answer I have heard tonight." Tessa, standing behind Harper, took a slow sip of champagne to hide her grin. Harper felt something loosen in her chest. She could do this. For a while she did. She moved from group to group with practiced ease. She remembered names and details. She made a nervous junior donor feel important. She redirected a drunk board member before he insulted a judge's wife. She laughed at the right moments, listened at the better ones, and left people feeling slightly more interesting than they were. The sapphire gown drew glances. Some kind, some curious, some sharp. Harper felt everyone but she did not fold beneath them. At one point she caught her reflection in a darkened window and did not look away. That small act felt almost rebellious. She was standing near the silent auction when Tessa appeared beside her, suddenly still. The shift was subtle, but Harper knew her friend too well. What Harper asked. Tessa's eyes moved past her shoulder. Harper already knew before she turned. Some bodies remember danger before the mind names it. Ethan Caldwell had entered the ballroom. He wore a perfectly fitted black tuxedo and the relaxed confidence of a man who had never wondered whether a room would make space for him. His sandy hair was combed back. His smile was bright, polished, and empty in the middle. Madison Lane stood beside him in a silver gown that clung to her narrow frame like moonlight. Her blonde hair fell in smooth waves over one shoulder. She had the soft, glowing look of a woman who built a living out of being watched. Ethan's hand rested at her lower back. Possessive. Public. A photographer stopped them near the entrance. Madison angled her chin. Ethan smiled. Harper felt the old ache rise before she could stop it. Not love, not longing. Something worse. Recognition. Her body remembered trying to be enough for that smile. Tessa stepped closer. "We can leave." Harper kept her eyes on Ethan. "No, Harper, I am working." Tessa studied her face. "Then work. Do not bleed for him." Harper nodded once. She turned away before Ethan could see her staring, but it was too late. Across the ballroom, Ethan's gaze found her. His smile did not disappear. It changed. There was no surprise in it, not really. Only a slow satisfaction, as if the night had just offered him a private entertainment. Madison followed his stare. Her eyes traveled over Harper's gown, down and back up again, with the quick little assessment women are taught to perform before they are taught kindness. She leaned toward Ethan and whispered something. Ethan laughed. Harper felt it across the room. Tessa saw her flinch. "Ignore him, I am. No, you are surviving him. Different verb." Harper forced herself to look at Margaret Whitaker again, who was now speaking to the foundation director. This was the point of the evening. Not Ethan. Not Madison. Not old wounds wearing new cologne. She lifted her champagne, took one measured sip, and walked toward the Whitakers. For the next 15 minutes, she refused to let Ethan matter. She spoke with the foundation director about community outreach. She discussed reputation repair without sounding hungry for the account. She listened when Margaret described her late husband's dream of opening reading rooms in small towns across Louisiana. Harper's answers were thoughtful, specific, human. Margaret seemed pleased. Graham Whitaker asked for her card. Harper handed it to him without letting her fingers shake. Then the jazz quartet shifted into a slower song, and the crowd rearranged itself. Couples moved toward the dance floor. Donors drifted toward the bar. Tessa was pulled into a conversation with a councilwoman who wanted advice on a minor social media disaster. Harper found herself alone beside a wall of framed photographs from past charity balls. Black and white faces smiled from another era. Women in gloves, men in tails, children holding oversized checks, a whole history of generosity staged under expensive lights. Harper looked at one photograph of a young woman in a white gown from 1964. The woman's chin was lifted. Her eyes were bright. She looked like she had never once apologized for taking up space. Harper wondered what that felt like. Then a voice spoke behind her. "Well, Harper Monroe." Her spine went tight. She turned. Ethan stood close enough that she could smell his cologne. Clean, expensive, familiar in a way that made her stomach turn. Madison was not with him. He held a glass of scotch in one hand and wore the soft smile that used to fool strangers. "Ethan Harper said." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. His eyes moved over her body. Slowly. Not with admiration. With ownership of old wounds. "I did not expect to see you here. I work with Bennett and Vale. We represent several guests tonight. Still doing reputation cleanup. Still being paid well for it." His smile tightened. "Good for you." Harper stepped slightly to the side. "I need to get back to my client." Ethan shifted with her, blocking the path so smoothly that anyone watching might think they were having a private, pleasant conversation. "Already running, I am leaving a conversation I did not ask for." His eyes flickered. There it was. The irritation beneath the polish. Ethan did not like when she sounded whole. "You look different," he said. Harper held his gaze. "I am. No," he said softly. "That is not what I meant." The music seemed to dim around them, though Harper knew it had not. Ethan leaned closer. His smile remained. His voice lowered. "I meant the dress." Harper felt her pulse in her throat. Do not what? Do not do this." He gave a quiet laugh. "I am trying to help you. Someone should." Harper's hand tightened around her clutch. Ethan's gaze dipped once more to the sapphire fabric at her waist. "You always did confuse attention with admiration." For a second, Harper was back in every restaurant, every boutique, every car ride where he had taught her to swallow pain quietly. She looked past him, searching for Tessa. Too many bodies. Too much light, too much noise. Ethan followed her glance and smiled wider. "No rescue tonight." Harper's jaw clenched. "I do not need rescuing." "Of course not," he said. "That is why you look like you're about to cry." Her cheeks burned. He stepped closer, close enough that his words could slide under the music and reach only her. "You should have picked something darker, Harper. Blue makes you look wider." The sentence struck with the exact shape of memory. Harper did not answer. Ethan's voice became softer, crueler. "And honestly, after everything I thought you would have learned. Rooms like this have standards. Men like the ones here notice details." Harper's breath turned shallow. "Stop." He tilted his head, pretending concern. "I am only saying what everyone else is too polite to say." Harper stared at him, and for one brief, bright second she wanted to throw the champagne in his face. She wanted the glass to shatter. She wanted the room to turn and see him without the charm, without the tuxedo, without the careful smile that made cruelty look civilized. But her body betrayed her. Her throat closed. Her eyes stung. Ethan saw it happen, and satisfaction warmed his face. "There she is," he whispered. "Same Harper. Too emotional, too soft, too big to love without being a charity case." Something inside her went silent. Not healed, not calm. Silent in the way a house goes silent after the last light breaks. Harper took one step back. Ethan's smile faltered, perhaps because she did not plead, did not defend, did not perform the pain he had come to watch. She turned away. Behind her, he said her name once low and amused. She kept walking. The ballroom blurred at the edges. Laughter brushed against her skin like static. Someone said hello. Someone else complimented her dress. Harper did not know if she answered. She moved past the champagne tower, past the magnolia arrangements, past the balcony doors where rain trembled against the glass. Her breath came too fast. She needed air, darkness, a place where no one could see the damage. At the end of a side corridor half hidden behind a velvet curtain, she found a mahogany door with a small brass plaque. Private Library. Harper pushed it open and slipped inside. The door closed behind her, swallowing the music until only the rain remained. Harper stood with her back against the wood, one hand pressed to her chest, as if she could keep herself from falling apart by force alone. The library was dim, lit only by a pair of brass lamps on a long reading table, and the silver wash of rain sliding down the tall windows. Shelves climbed the walls from floor to ceiling, crowded with old books no one at the gala had probably touched in years. The air smelled of leather dust, cigar smoke, and something darker, something warm and expensive that did not belong to the room. For a moment, Harper did not move. She listened to herself breathe. In, out, too fast. She tried to swallow, but her throat ached. Ethan's words kept repeating inside her, not as memory, but as sound. Fresh. Living. Cruel. Too big to love. She hated herself for letting it hurt. She hated that he still knew where to cut. She hated that one whisper from him could make her forget every good thing she had built after leaving him. Her hand slipped from her chest to her stomach. The sapphire fabric was smooth beneath her palm. An hour earlier, the gown had felt brave. Now, it felt like evidence in a trial she had already lost. She crossed the room on unsteady legs and reached the nearest window. Outside, New Orleans blurred in rain and gold light. The street below shone like black glass. Car headlights moved through the storm in slow, ghostly lines. Harper saw her reflection in the window. The woman looking back at her was beautiful. Harper knew that in the cold, reasonable part of her mind. She knew beauty did not belong to one shape, one size, one kind of woman. She had told friends that. She had written campaigns about confidence. She had stood in meetings and argued that women should not be reduced to marketable bodies. But knowing a thing and feeling it in the bones were not the same. Her eyes filled. She turned away from the reflection too quickly, gripping the back of a leather chair. A sob escaped before she could stop it. Small. Humiliating, then another. She pressed her hand over her mouth, but the sound broke through her fingers. She bent forward, shoulders trembling, trying to make herself quiet. She had not cried in public when Ethan left. She had not cried when he posted the first photo with Madison. She had not cried when people who once called her almost family slowly stopped inviting her anywhere. She had saved her tears for showers, pillows, and parking garages. Now she was crying in a hotel library while the most powerful people in Louisiana drank champagne 20 feet away. Perfect, she thought bitterly. Absolutely perfect. Then a man's voice came from the shadows. A woman should never have to hide her tears in a room built for men's secrets. Harper gasped and spun around. Her heel caught on the edge of the rug. She grabbed the chair to steady herself, heart slamming against her ribs. "Who's there?" A pause followed. Not empty. Measured. The kind of silence that had weight. Near the unlit fireplace, a shape moved. A man rose from a deep leather chair she had not noticed. He had been sitting in the darkest corner of the room where the lamplight failed, and the shadows gathered around him like loyal men. He stepped forward slowly. Harper's breath caught for a different reason. He was tall. Not simply tall in the way men describe themselves on dating apps, but tall in a way that changed the scale of the room. Broad shoulders filled out a black suit that looked hand-cut and unforgiving. His shirt was wide open at the throat without a tie, the smallest rebellion against formal rules. His dark hair was pushed back from a face that seemed carved rather than born all hard lines, controlled mouth, and eyes so deep brown they were almost black. He looked like danger dressed for a funeral. Harper wiped at her cheeks, quickly smearing the edge of her makeup. "I'm sorry," she said. "I thought this room was empty." "It was quiet," he replied. "Not empty." His voice was low, rough at the edges, touched with a southern smoothness that made every word feel deliberate. Harper straightened, gathering what remained of her dignity. "I didn't mean to intrude. You didn't. I'll go." "No." The words stopped her more than volume could have. He had not raised his voice. He did not need to. Harper stared at him. "Excuse me." "You are shaking," he said. "That doesn't mean I need an audience." "No," he said. "It means someone gave you a reason." She looked toward the door. The music outside was muffled, distant. Her escape had become a trap with velvet walls. "I'm fine." He tilted his head slightly. "Are you?" She hated that question. Hated the gentleness of it even more. Gentle made her weak. Gentle made the tears threaten again. "I said I'm fine, and I heard you lie." Her eyes snapped back to him. For the first time, something close to anger rose through the shame. "You don't know me." "No," he said, "but I know what a person looks like when they are trying not to break." The words should have felt invasive. Instead, they struck too close to truth. Harper looked down at her clutch, gripping it with both hands now. "I had a bad conversation, that's all. A conversation does not leave bruises you can't see." She laughed once, but it came out wrong. "You always talk like that." "When people insult my intelligence, yes." She looked up. I'm not insulting you. You are asking me to believe that you came in here, locked yourself away from a room full of music, and cried over nothing. I didn't lock the door. No. You only looked like you wished you had. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile, something sharper. Harper should have been afraid. A stranger in the dark. A powerful-looking man who spoke like he owned the air. But fear had layers, and somehow Ethan's voice still sat heavier on her chest than this man's presence. She drew in a slow breath. My ex said something cruel. The man's expression changed almost imperceptibly. His eyes sharpened. Name. Harper blinked. What, his name? That's not your business. You're right. The answer surprised her. He took one step closer, then stopped, as if aware of the distance between them. It is not my business unless you make it mine. Harper studied him. His hands were relaxed at his sides. Large hands. Bare of rings except for one signet on his right hand. Black stone set in heavy gold. Not flashy. Final. Why would I do that? Because I heard him. The room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Harper's grip tightened around her clutch. You heard, yes. Her stomach turned. How much? All of it. The words landed with fresh humiliation. She turned away, closing her eyes. Of course. Of course someone had heard. Not a friend, not Tessa, a stranger. A man who now knew exactly how small Ethan had made her feel. Her voice came out thin. Then you know enough. No, he said quietly. I know what he said. I do not know why you believed him. Harper turned back before she could stop herself. I didn't say I believed him. You didn't have to. That should have made her angry again. Instead, it made her tired. She looked toward the rain-streaked window. People like him don't start with the worst thing. They build to it. A comment here, a look there, a joke in front of friends, a concern that sounds loving until you realize it is a leash. The man did not interrupt. That silence pulled the rest from her. He was my fiancé. Ethan Caldwell. We were together 3 years. By the end, I couldn't eat in front of him without hearing his voice. I couldn't buy a dress without imagining his face. I couldn't look at myself without wondering what he would fix first. The man's jaw tightened. Harper saw it. It should have warned her. Instead, it warmed something cold inside her. She looked down quickly. I don't know why I'm telling you this, because I asked for the truth. No, you demanded it. Yes. His honesty startled a laugh from her, soft and broken. You really are arrogant. Only when I'm right. For the first time since Ethan had cornered her, Harper almost smiled. The man saw it. His gaze dropped briefly to her mouth, then returned to her eyes with an intensity that made the air feel thinner. What did he call you? Harper's smile vanished. She shook her head. I don't want to repeat it, I know. Then why ask? Because monsters get smaller when dragged into the light. Harper swallowed. The words sat heavy between them. Outside, thunder rolled softly over the city. She looked at the stranger, at the black suit, the calm face, the eyes that seemed to see too much. My ex called me too big to love. The sentence came out barely above a whisper. For several seconds, the room went silent. Not awkward. Dangerous. The man did not move. Even the rain seemed to soften against the glass. Then his eyes traveled over her, but not the way Ethan's had. Ethan looked at her body like a flaw he was entitled to judge. This man looked at her like she was art in a burning museum, and he was deciding who deserved to die for setting the fire. When he spoke, his voice was lower. Your ex is a small man with a starving soul. Harper's breath caught. He stepped closer, still slow, still giving her time to move away. She did not. There is nothing too much about you, he said. Not your body. Not your voice. Not the space you take in a room. Men like him want women smaller because they are terrified of being seen beside someone whole. Harper felt the words in places praise had never reached. She wanted to reject them. That was habit. Instead, she whispered, "You don't know that. I know men. That isn't the same thing as knowing me." "No," he said, "but I know this." He came closer now, close enough that she could smell him. Bourbon, smoke, rain, something clean and dark beneath it. You walked into that ballroom wearing blue like a dare. He saw men look at you. He saw women measure themselves against you. He saw you standing without his permission, and it frightened him. Harper stared at him. No one had ever described Ethan's cruelty that way. Not as truth, as fear. "You think he was afraid of me? I think weak men often are." Her throat tightened again, but this time the tears felt different. Less like shame, more like something thawing. The man reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and withdrew a folded white handkerchief. He held it out. Harper looked at it, then at him. "Do men still carry those?" my mother insisted. That answer was so unexpected she took it. The cotton was soft, monogrammed with the letters R.H. She noticed them just as the realization began to move through her mind. R.H. The black suit. The signet ring. The men she had glimpsed in the hallway earlier standing too still to be hotel security. The way he spoke like command was his first language. Her pulse changed. She looked at his face more carefully. The name came to her not from society pages but from whispers, from clients who lowered their voices, from reporters who chased corruption until suddenly they found safer beats, from the old stories people told about the Mississippi docks after midnight. Roman Hawthorne, the king beneath the city. Harper took a step back. "You're Roman Hawthorne." He did not smile. "I am." Her fingers tightened around his handkerchief. Every instinct that had been asleep under grief woke at once. Roman Hawthorne was not just rich. He was not just dangerous in the romantic way people use the word when they meant handsome and rude. He was dangerous in the way judges avoided saying his name. Dangerous in the way shipments moved when he allowed them to move. Dangerous in the way men disappeared from places where cameras happened to fail. The Hawthorne family had owned half the rumors in New Orleans for 3 generations, and she had just cried in front of him. About her ex. "I should leave." "No." This time the word made her angry. "You don't get to tell me no." Something in his eyes shifted. Approval, maybe. "No," he said, "I don't." That answer stopped her again. Roman took one step back, giving her the path to the door. Harper could have walked out. She did not. He looked toward the ballroom. But if you leave like this, he wins the moment he came for. He doesn't win anything. "I'm just done. You are not done. You are wounded." Harper's mouth trembled. "I don't want to go back out there. I know. I don't want them looking at me. They are already looking. Let them see you standing." Her laugh was bitter. "With you, if you choose." There it was again. Choice. Small, but real. Harper looked at the door. Behind it waited the ballroom. The Chandeliers, the Whitakers, Tessa Madison, Ethan. Especially Ethan. He would be expecting her to stay gone. He would tell himself he had been right. He would watch the door every few minutes with that smug satisfaction knowing he had made her vanish. Her stomach twisted. Roman's voice softened. "Harper." She looked back at him. He knew her name from her confession, yet in his mouth it sounded different. Not casual, not claimed. Spoken with weight. "You do not have to be fearless. You only have to refuse to kneel." The words moved through her slowly. Harper looked down at herself, at the sapphire gown, at the body she had spent years treating like an apology. Then she remembered Tessa's voice. Stop living like a background character. Her fingers closed around Roman's handkerchief. I can't stop shaking. You can shake and still walk. A breath left her almost a laugh. That sounds like something people say before doing something stupid. Roman's eyes darkened with amusement. I have built an empire on doing what other people call stupid. That is not comforting. It was not meant to be. For reasons Harper could not explain that steadied her more than comfort would have. She dabbed beneath her eyes, careful not to ruin the rest of her makeup. Roman watched without speaking. Not impatient, not pitying, just present. When she finished, she tried to hand the handkerchief back. Keep it, he said. It has mascara on it. Then it has served a noble purpose. The smallest smile escaped her. Roman saw it, and something in his face changed. The hard lines did not soften exactly, but the room seemed warmer for one dangerous second. Then footsteps sounded outside the door. A shadow moved past the frosted glass. Harper stiffened. Roman turned his head slightly. The footsteps stopped. A male voice murmured from outside. Boss Roman did not raise his voice. Not now. The shadow vanished immediately. Harper stared. They work for you. Yes. Do they always stand outside doors when I am inside them? That must make privacy complicated. I rarely seek privacy in places I do not control. And do you control this hotel? Roman met her eyes. The answer was in his silence. Harper exhaled. Of course you do. Not officially. That makes it worse. Usually. Another strange laugh almost rose in her chest. She swallowed it because laughing with Roman Hawthorne in a dark library felt like stepping closer to a flame just to admire the color. She glanced toward the door again. If I walk out there with you, people will talk. They already do, about you. Let them improve the subject. She looked back at him. What does that mean? It means they will talk about you. I don't want that. No, Roman said. You want respect. Unfortunately, in rooms like that, one attention often arrives first. Harper hated how true that felt. She lifted her chin slightly, and Ethan Roman's expression cooled. What about him? What are you going to do? His gaze stayed on hers. That depends. On what, on how well he apologizes. The quiet violence beneath the words brushed over her skin. Roman. His name came out before she could think better of it. He noticed. So did she. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he said, Yes. You can't hurt him. I can. I mean, you shouldn't. That is a different sentence. Her pulse kicked. I'm serious. So am I. Harper stared at him. The danger was not hidden now. It stood between them, dressed in black, patient and honest. Ethan had been cruel behind charm. Roman was ruthless without pretending otherwise. That should have made the choice simple. It did not. Why do you care? She asked. Roman looked at her for a long moment. When he answered, his voice was quieter. My mother was a large woman. Harper did not expect that. Roman's eyes moved toward the rain-streaked window, though she sensed he was seeing something much older. She had a laugh that filled every room before she entered it. She wore red lipstick to breakfast and pearls to argue with bankers. Men called her excessive, loud, too much. His mouth tightened. My father called her magnificent. Harper listened still. When she died, half the city came to the funeral. Some came because they loved her. Some because they feared my father. Most because they had spent their lives underestimating her and realized too late she had shaped them anyway. He looked back at Harper. So, when I hear a man try to make a woman smaller because he lacks the strength to stand beside her, I take it personally. The room went quiet again. This time, not dangerous. Intimate. Harper's grip loosened around the handkerchief. "I'm sorry about your mother." "So am I." 2 simple sentences. No performance. No polished grief. Harper saw him differently then. Still dangerous. Still unreadable in places. But not empty. Not just shadow and reputation. There was a wound under the suit. Maybe that was what recognized hers. From beyond the door, the jazz music swelled, then softened again. Life continuing without permission. Harper drew in a slow breath. "If I go back out there, I speak for myself." Roman's eyes sharpened with something like satisfaction. "Yes. You don't get to decide what I say. No, you don't get to touch me unless I want you to." Roman's gaze dropped to her mouth for one brief second, then returned to her eyes. "Understood, and you don't get to make this about owning me." His expression turned almost severe. "Harper, if I wanted something that could be owned, I would buy another building." The answer should not have pleased her. It did anyway. She stepped closer, not much, but enough that the air changed. "I don't know if I trust you." "Good." Her brow furrowed. Good trust given too quickly is usually desperation wearing perfume. Harper studied him. "You say a lot of unsettling things. You keep listening." That time, she did smile. Roman extended his arm. Not grabbing, not demanding, offering. The black sleeve of his suit cut a dark line through the lamplight. Harper looked at it, then at the door, then at herself in the window again. The reflection looked frightened, but not broken. She handed him back the handkerchief after all. He accepted it without looking away from her. Then she placed her hand on his arm. The muscle beneath the suit was solid, controlled warm. Roman's other hand covered hers for half a second. Barely a touch. Enough to steady, not enough to cage. "You are shaking," he said. "I know." "You are still standing," she breathed in. "Yes." Roman turned toward the door. Before he opened it, Harper stopped him. "Wait." He looked down at her. She reached into her clutch, found her lipstick, and stepped to the small mirror above a side table. Her hand trembled as she uncapped it. The deep berry color had faded at the center. Roman watched from behind her in the mirror. Harper applied the lipstick slowly, carefully, not because the room deserved her beauty, because Ethan did not deserve her ruin. She pressed her lips together once, returned the tube to her clutch, and faced Roman. Now, something like pride moved through his eyes. He opened the library door. Sound rushed in. Music, laughter, glass, rain behind the windows. The glittering life of the Magnolia Charity Ball still turning, still pretending nothing ugly had happened beneath its chandeliers. Harper stepped beside Roman Hawthorne into the corridor. At first, no one noticed. Then one woman near the entrance saw them and stopped speaking mid-sentence. Her companion turned to follow her gaze. Then another. Then another. The silence traveled ahead of them before they reached the ballroom doors. Harper's hand tightened on Roman's arm. He leaned just slightly toward her, his voice low enough for her alone. "Breathe, little fire." Her heart hammered. "I don't feel like fire." His gaze fixed forward. "You will." The ballroom opened before them, bright as a stage. And across that stage, Ethan Caldwell turned with a glass in his hand, still wearing the smile of a man who thought he had won. For one breath, Harper saw only him. The polished tuxedo, the lazy confidence, the expensive watch glinting beneath his cuff, the mouth that had once kissed her forehead in public and cut her open in private. He stood near the champagne tower with Madison Lane tucked beside him. His body relaxed, his expression warm for the guests around him. Then his eyes landed on Roman Hawthorne. The smile drained from his face so completely it was almost beautiful. Harper felt the change ripple through the room before she understood it. Conversations softened first, then they broke apart. A woman in emerald satin stopped laughing mid-breath. A waiter slowed with a silver tray held at chest height. Near the orchestra, the trumpet player missed half a note and recovered too late for no one to notice. Roman did not hurry. He walked like a man who had never needed to. Harper moved beside him, her hand resting on his arm, her fingers still trembling against the black sleeve of his suit. Every pair of eyes seemed to find them. She could feel the room inspecting her again, but this time the attention had changed shape. Before, the glances had asked what right she had to wear that dress, take that space stand in that light. Now they asked why Roman Hawthorne had chosen to put her there. Harper hated that part of her wanted to be grateful for the difference. Roman seemed to sense the thought without looking down. His voice reached her quietly. "Keep your chin up. I am trying." "No," he said. "Trying looks smaller than this." A strange breath left her, almost a laugh. "Do you always give orders as encouragement, when encouragement fails to move fast enough?" Harper looked straight ahead. "I told you I speak for myself, and I listened." The answer was simple, but it steadied her. They passed a group of donors who stepped aside without being asked. One man, a shipping executive Harper recognized from a client file, lowered his gaze the second Roman looked in his direction. A councilman turned pale and pretended to become fascinated with his drink. Roman's reputation was not loud in the room. It was heavier than sound. Madison saw them coming and touched Ethan's sleeve. "Ethan," she whispered. He did not answer. His eyes were fixed on Roman with the kind of fear rich men tried to hide and failed at because they were not used to needing courage. Harper remembered Ethan in the library corridor of her mind, smiling after he had wounded her. Too big to love. The words still hurt. But now, walking through that room beside a man everyone feared, Harper realized something that unsettled her more than comfort would have. Ethan had never been powerful. He had only been familiar with her pain. Roman stopped in front of him. The circle around them formed naturally. Not close enough to admit curiosity, not far enough to miss anything. Ethan lifted his glass a little as if manners could save him. "Mr. Hawthorne," he said. His voice cracked on the last syllable. Roman looked at the glass first, then at Ethan. "Caldwell, you know me, I know enough." Madison's eyes moved quickly between the two men. Her hand slipped from Ethan's arm. Ethan noticed and tried to laugh. "Well, I didn't realize you were attending tonight. It's quite an honor for the Foundation." Roman's expression did not change. "I am not here for the Foundation." The words settled coldly. Ethan swallowed. Harper felt his gaze flick to her, then away again. He would not look at her for longer than half a second, not now, not with Roman close enough to hear every breath. Roman turned his head toward Harper. His voice softened in a way that made several people nearby go still. Is this the man Harper's heart knocked once hard? This was the moment. She could let Roman take it. She could let his name, his danger, his black-suited calm, do what her own voice had failed to do for 3 years. Ethan's eyes finally met hers. There was warning in them, a small, familiar command. "Do not embarrass me." That old command had lived in her body for too long. Harper released Roman's arm, only by an inch, enough to stand on her own. "Yes," she said, "that's him." Ethan's jaw flexed. "Harper, don't do this." She heard the old rhythm in his voice. Smooth, controlled. The tone he used when he wanted her to feel childish. But his hands betrayed him. One finger tapped against the side of his glass. Roman saw it. Harper did too. Don't do what she asked. Ethan forced a smile for the room. Turn a private misunderstanding into a scene. Harper looked at him for a long moment. You were comfortable making it private because you thought shame worked better when no one else could hear it. A murmur moved through the watching guests. Ethan's face tightened. Lower your voice. Roman's eyes went dark. Harper lifted her chin. No. The single word rang through her more than through the room. Ethan stared at her as if she had slapped him. Madison shifted beside him, putting more distance between their bodies. Ethan tried to recover. Harper, you're emotional. You always get emotional when you feel cornered. I was cornered, she said, by you. He laughed, once soft and dismissive. This is ridiculous. Roman finally spoke. No, ridiculous is a man whispering poison into a woman's ear, then acting surprised when it stains his own mouth. Ethan turned sharply toward him. Mr. Hawthorne, with respect, you don't understand our history. Roman stepped closer. Ethan stopped breathing for half a second. With respect, Roman said, I understand men like you better than God does. The ballroom went still again. Ethan's skin lost more color. I didn't mean anything by it. Harper's hands went cold. That was almost worse than the insult itself. The tiny cowardice of denial. The way men like Ethan could place a blade between your ribs, then accuse you of bleeding too dramatically. You meant it, Harper said. Ethan looked at her, irritation flashing through the fear. Fine, I said something harsh. But you know how you get. I was reacting. To what? He blinked. Harper took one small step forward. To my dress, to my body, to the fact that I was standing in a room where you no longer had the right to decide whether I belonged. Ethan's mouth opened. No answer came. Someone nearby inhaled sharply. Tessa had appeared at the edge of the crowd. Harper saw her over Madison's shoulder, eyes wide, champagne forgotten in her hand. Tessa did not move toward her. She seemed to understand that Harper did not need rescue in that second. She needed witness. Roman's voice lowered. Tell me exactly what you said to her. Ethan shook his head. There's no need for that. Roman smiled. It was not kind. I disagree. Ethan looked around. The room had turned into a court without anyone taking an oath. Mr. Hawthorne, I think this has gone far enough. Roman's smile vanished. You do not decide distance with me. Ethan's glass trembled in his hand. Harper watched him, and something inside her loosened another inch. He looked smaller than she remembered. Not physically. He was still tall, still handsome in the way that opened doors for him. But the grandness she had once assigned to him had begun to peel away. Underneath was a frightened man with an expensive haircut. Roman glanced at Harper, asking without words. Harper understood. She could stop. She could walk away. She could bury the moment and call it dignity. Instead, she looked at Ethan and said, Tell them. Ethan's eyes snapped to her. What? Tell them what you called me. Harper, say it. His lips pressed together. Madison whispered, Ethan, just apologize. He shot her a look, then remembered Roman was watching and immediately regretted it. Roman's voice cut through the silence. Say it. Ethan's throat moved. I said she was being dramatic. No, Harper said. Ethan stared at her. She did not look away. The seconds stretched. Finally, he exhaled through his nose, humiliation burning red along his cheekbones. I said she was too big to love. The words fell into the room like a broken glass. No one moved. No one laughed. Harper felt them land, but they did not enter her the same way this time. Spoken aloud, beneath chandeliers stripped of the whisper, the sentence sounded less like truth and more like evidence. Roman looked at the room, then back at Ethan. Interesting. Ethan swallowed. It was a cruel thing to say. I admit that. No, Roman said. You said it because you believed cruelty would make you taller. Ethan's expression twisted. That is not what this is. Roman leaned in slightly. It is exactly what this is. You stood beside a woman who outgrew you, and instead of becoming worthy, you tried to make her doubt her own size. Harper's breath caught. Roman turned his head toward her. For a second, the ballroom disappeared. His voice softened again. He was wrong. Harper felt every eye on her. She wanted to look down. She did not. "Yes," she said quietly. He was. Roman's gaze returned to Ethan. "Apologize." Ethan nodded too quickly. "Of course. Harper, I'm sorry." Roman's face remained still. That was noise. Ethan's eyes widened. What? Try again? With the truth this time. Ethan looked at Harper. For the first time that evening, he looked as if he could not find the version of her he knew how to control. "I'm sorry," he said, slower now. "I'm sorry I called you too big to love. I'm sorry I tried to humiliate you." Harper's throat tightened. Ethan continued because Roman's silence demanded more. "I was angry. You looked confident and I wanted to take that from you." Madison made a faint sound like a breath catching on disappointment. Harper looked at Ethan carefully. The apology did not heal her. It did not erase the years. It did not hand her back the meals she had skipped, the photos she had deleted, the dresses she had not bought. But it did something. It returned the shame to its owner. Harper stepped closer. "You don't get to call me Harp anymore." Ethan blinked. What, that name belonged to someone who thought love meant being corrected until she vanished. His face tightened. "Harper, please. You do not get the soft version of my name." A quiet sound moved through the crowd, not applause, not shock exactly. Recognition. Tessa's eyes shone from across the circle. Roman watched Harper with an expression that felt more dangerous than desire. Pride, maybe. Ethan lowered his eyes. "I understand." "No," Harper said. "You don't, but you will remember." Roman's gaze shifted toward Ethan's glass. "Put it down." Ethan looked confused. "My drink." Roman did not repeat himself. Ethan placed the glass on a passing waiter's tray with shaking fingers. The waiter accepted it and disappeared so quickly it seemed he had been trained by ghosts. Roman stepped closer. Ethan stood rigid. "You manage money for several families in this city," Roman said. Ethan's face changed. "Not much, but enough." Harper saw it. So did Roman. "I manage legitimate portfolios." Roman's eyes were calm. "Of course." Ethan licked his lips. "I don't know what you think you know." Roman adjusted one cuff with slow precision. "I think you have built a handsome life on money that does not belong in clean banks." Ethan's mouth went dry. Madison stared at him. "Ethan?" He did not answer her. Roman continued, voice soft enough that people leaned forward despite themselves. "I think men with hidden ledgers should be more careful about making enemies in public rooms." Ethan's panic finally broke through the polished surface. "If this is about what I said, I apologized." Roman looked almost bored. Apologies are what weak men offer when consequences arrive faster than expected. Harper touched Roman's sleeve lightly. He looked down at her. The room held its breath. She kept her voice low, meant for him. "Roman." That was all. A warning, a question, a boundary. For one moment his eyes remained cold. Then they warmed by a fraction. He looked back at Ethan. "You are fortunate she is standing here." Ethan nodded rapidly. "Yes, absolutely. Harper, thank you." Harper's face hardened. "I did not save you." Roman smiled faintly. "No," he said. "She reminded me this is a ballroom." The words did not comfort Ethan. They were not meant to. Roman stepped back and offered Harper his arm again. This time, she looked at it before taking it. She wanted everyone watching to know it was a choice. When her hand settled against him, Roman covered it briefly with his. Then he addressed Ethan one last time. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, Caldwell." Ethan gave a stiff nod. "Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne." Roman's eyes sharpened. That was not kindness. Ethan froze. Roman leaned closer, his voice dropping so only Ethan, Harper, and perhaps Madison could hear. It was time. Ethan's face went blank with fear. Roman straightened. Harper felt the crowd part behind her before they even turned. People moved aside in silence, pretending not to stare and staring anyway. As she passed Tessa, her friend whispered, "You okay?" Harper paused. The honest answer was too large for the room, so she gave the truest small one. "Not yet." Tessa nodded. "Good, yet is useful." Harper almost smiled. Roman guided her toward the grand doors, but he did not rush her. Every step back through the ballroom felt different from the walk-in. She still felt exposed, still shaken, still aware of every eye and every whisper waiting to bloom after she left. But there was a clean place inside her now. Small, bright, untouched by Ethan's voice. At the edge of the ballroom, Margaret Whittaker stood beside the foundation director. Harper expected judgment. Instead, the older woman inclined her head in quiet respect. Harper returned the gesture. No words passed between them. None were needed. The lobby beyond the ballroom was cooler and quieter. The marble reflected the chandelier light in pale gold. Outside the front doors, rain continued to fall over the city, softening the sharp edges of the night. A hotel attendant opened the doors before Roman reached them. No one asked for his ticket. No one asked where he was going. A black SUV waited at the curb engine, running windows dark enough to hold secrets. The rain had slowed to a mist. Roman removed his suit jacket and placed it over Harper's shoulders. It was warm from his body and smelled faintly of smoked bourbon and the night air after lightning. Harper pulled it closer before she could stop herself. Then she looked up at him. "You humiliated him." Roman's face was unreadable beneath the hotel lights. He humiliated himself. "I gave him an audience. That is a convenient distinction. It is an accurate one." Harper looked toward the wet street. "He was scared of you?" "Yes." "You liked that?" Roman did not lie. "Yes." Harper turned back to him. "Should I be scared of you?" The question settled between them, heavier than the rain. Roman looked at her for a long moment. "Yes." Her breath caught. He stepped closer but stopped before he crowded her. "You should be scared enough to keep your eyes open, not enough to run from your own judgment." Harper studied him. "That is a strange answer. It is an honest one." She believed that. Strangely, she believed that more than any easy reassurance he could have given. Behind them, the hotel doors opened again. Laughter spilled out, then quickly died when the guests saw Roman still standing there. The doors closed. Harper exhaled. "My firm needed tonight to go well. It did. You don't know that. I know Margaret Whittaker watched you make a man confess his cruelty without raising your voice." Harper blinked. "You noticed Margaret Whittaker." "I notice everything in rooms I enter. Of course you do." His mouth curved faintly. "You impressed her." Harper looked away, not trusting the small bloom of hope in her chest. "I also became the center of a scandal. In New Orleans, those are often the same thing." That time she did laugh, though it shook at the edges. Roman watched the sound as if it mattered. A driver opened the rear door of the SUV. Harper did not move. Roman noticed. "I can have my driver take you home alone." She looked at him. "You're not coming? Only if you want me to." The offer unsettled her more than a command might have. Ethan had always made choices feel like traps. Roman made danger feel like a door left open. Harper looked back at the hotel. Somewhere inside, Ethan was probably still standing in the ruins of his pride. Madison was probably deciding how far away from him she needed to be seen. Tessa was probably gathering every detail for later and preparing to threaten anyone who repeated the story wrong. Harper should have gone home. She should have removed the dress, washed her face, and tried to sleep. Instead, she found herself looking at Roman Hawthorne, at the man who had heard the worst thing said to her, and refused to let it stay hidden. "I don't know what I want from you," she said. Roman's expression did not change, but his voice lowered. "Then we start with getting you home safely." A simple answer, no pressure, no velvet trap. Harper nodded and stepped into the SUV. Roman followed only after she had settled inside. The door closed with a soft, heavy sound, sealing out the rain and the hotel lights. Inside, the vehicle smelled of leather and cedar. The cities blurred beyond the tinted windows. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Harper sat with his jacket around her shoulders, her hands folded in her lap. The adrenaline began to fade, leaving a deep tremor behind. Roman noticed. He reached toward a side compartment and took out a bottle of water. He opened it before handing it to her. "Drink." She raised an eyebrow. Encouragement again. Hydration. She took it. Their fingers brushed. The contact was brief, but the warmth of it traveled up her arm. Harper drank, then leaned her head back against the seat. "I hate that he still got to me." Roman looked out the window. "Wounds ache when pressed. That does not mean they own you." She turned the bottle in her hands. "He used to make me feel insane, like I was too sensitive, too needy, too much of everything." Roman's jaw tightened. Men who cannot dominate the world often start with the woman beside them. Harper looked at him. "And men who can dominate the world?" Roman's gaze returned to her. "They have fewer excuses." The honesty of that sat between them. Harper looked down at the jacket around her shoulders. "Why did you stop when I said your name?" Roman was quiet for a moment. "Because you said it like a woman drawing a line. And you respect lines, no?" Her eyes lifted. He continued, "I respect yours." The answer warmed her and frightened her in equal measure. The SUV turned onto a rain-slick street, leaving the St. Celeste behind. Street lamps slid across Roman's face in flashes of gold and shadow. He looked less like a man in those moments and more like a warning carved into human shape. Harper thought of Ethan's fear. Then she thought of her own. They were not the same. Ethan feared losing power. Harper feared stepping into hers. The thought came quietly, but once it arrived, it stayed. Roman's phone buzzed once. He glanced at the screen. Whatever he read made his eyes go cold again. Harper noticed business. "Yes." About Ethan. Roman locked the phone and slipped it back into his pocket. His silence answered. Harper's stomach tightened. "Roman." He looked at her. "I meant what I said inside. I don't want blood because my feelings were hurt." His gaze held hers. "No blood." She searched his face. "Promise me." Roman was still for a long second. Then he said, "I promise you there will be no blood tonight because of what he said to you." The wording was careful, too careful. Harper heard the space inside it. "What aren't you saying?" Roman looked toward the window again. "Ethan Caldwell has problems that existed before he opened his mouth." "What kind of problems?" "The kind that do not stay buried when a man attracts my attention." Harper's pulse slowed, then quickened. Outside, the city glowed wet and restless, unaware that somewhere behind them, Ethan Caldwell's polished life had begun to crack under the weight of secrets Harper had not known existed. The SUV carried Harper deeper into the New Orleans night. Roman, silent beside her, the taste of champagne and fear still fading from her tongue. By the time she reached her apartment, the rain had softened to a mist. The city looked blurred around the edges, like a painting left too close to water. Gas lamps glowed along the Garden District streets. Tree branches hung heavy over the road. Somewhere in the distance, a trumpet played a lonely note that rose, trembled, and disappeared. Roman did not ask to come upstairs. He stepped out of the SUV first, then offered his hand as Harper climbed down. His jacket still rested around her shoulders, warm and too large, carrying the scent of smoke and cedar and him. Her heels clicked softly against the wet sidewalk. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Harper looked toward her building, then back at him. "I should give this back." She touched the lapel of his jacket. Roman's eyes moved to her fingers. "Keep it tonight. It probably costs more than my couch. Then your couch should be honored." A tired laugh escaped her before she could stop it. It was small, but real. Roman looked at her as if the sound had entered him somewhere private. The moment stretched. Harper knew she should say goodnight. She knew men like Roman Hawthorne were not meant to be invited into quiet apartments with books on the coffee table and half-burned candles near the sink. He belonged to black cars, guarded doors, whispered calls, and rooms where powerful men forgot how to breathe. But he had also stood beside her in a ballroom when Ethan's words were still fresh on her skin. That made him harder to dismiss. "Thank you," she said. Roman's face remained calm. "For the ride. For not making me feel crazy." His gaze darkened. No man should ever teach a woman to distrust her own pain. The words reached her gently, then stayed. Harper looked down first. "Good night, Roman." He did not move closer. "Good night, Harper." She turned before she changed her mind about anything. At the front door, she looked back once. Roman stood by the SUV in the mist-black shirt open at the collar, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on her like he was making sure the night itself did not touch her wrong. Harper entered the building and locked the door behind her. Only when she was inside her apartment did her legs start to shake again. She dropped her clutch on the small entry table, kicked off her heels, and stood in the dark living room with Roman's jacket still around her shoulders. Her reflection stared back from the black window over the sofa. Sapphire gown. Berry lipstick. Mascara faintly smudged. A woman who had walked back into a ballroom after being broken open. She should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt hollow and electric at the same time. Her phone buzzed. "Tessa." Harper answered before the second ring. "Are you home?" "Yes." Door locked. "Yes, good. Now tell me why the most terrifying man in Louisiana walked you out like you were royalty, and Ethan looked like he saw his coffin." Harper sank onto the sofa. "I don't know. Try again." He heard Ethan. Tessa went quiet. "All of it, yes." "Jesus." Harper closed her eyes. "I cried in the library. Roman was there. You cried in front of Roman Hawthorne and survived. Apparently, that man does not look like he believes in emotional support." He was strange. Strange how Harper looked down at the jacket. "Honest." Tessa made a soft sound. "That might be worse." "It is." Silence passed between them, full of things Tessa wanted to ask but did not. Finally, she said, "I'm proud of you." Harper pressed her lips together. "I almost ran, but you didn't. I was shaking." And still standing, both can be true. Harper looked toward the bedroom where she knew the mirror waited. "I don't know what happens now. Now, you take off the dress, drink water, and sleep with every light on if you have to." Harper smiled faintly. "That is your professional advice." "My professional advice is to invoice the Whitakers for witnessing your personal growth." "Tessa, I am serious. Margaret Whitaker watched you make Ethan Caldwell apologize in front of half the city. That woman loves composure under pressure. You may have accidentally become her favorite scandal." Harper leaned back exhausted. "Wonderful. Rest, babe. We handle the room tomorrow." After they hung up, Harper remained on the sofa for a long time. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of rain against the window. She touched the fabric of Roman's jacket and tried not to think about his face when she had said his name in warning. He had stopped. That mattered. It frightened her that it mattered so much. Across the city, Ethan Caldwell was not sleeping either. He sat in his downtown penthouse with every light on, his tuxedo shirt unbuttoned at the throat, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. An untouched glass of scotch sat on the coffee table. His phone lay in his hand, the screen glowing with missed calls, unread messages, and one number he had dialed 17 times without answer. Cayman office. Disconnected. Private banking contact. Disconnected. Beaumont Holdings liaison. No response. Ethan stood and paced toward the windows. Below him, New Orleans glittered in rain and darkness. He had always loved the view from this height. The city looked manageable from above. Small. Owned. Tonight it looked like something waiting. He dialed again. Nothing. His mouth went dry. Roman Hawthorne knew. Not everything, Ethan told himself. He could not know everything. No one knew everything. The accounts had layers. Shell companies, private trusts, friendly signatures. The Beaumont money had moved through so many hands it could barely remember where it started. Still, Roman had looked at him like a man reading a confession already signed. Ethan threw the phone onto the sofa and dragged both hands through his hair. "This is Harper's fault," he whispered to the empty room, but even he did not believe it. At 6:17 the next morning, Ethan arrived at Crescent Capital Management wearing yesterday's fear under a fresh white shirt. The tower rose near the business district, all blue glass and silver lines reflecting a pale morning sky. Employees had not yet crowded the lobby. The floors smelled of coffee, marble polish, and money trying to look clean. Ethan walked fast. His shoes struck the floor too sharply. At the private elevator bank, he pulled out his access card and swiped it. The reader flashed red. He stared at it. Swiped again. Red, a third time. Red. "Come on," he muttered. Behind the security desk, a guard looked up. "Mr. Caldwell." Ethan turned. "What?" The guard's expression was carefully blank. "You need to step away from the elevator." Ethan laughed once. "Excuse me, please. Step away from the elevator. Do you know who I am?" The guard looked past him toward the revolving doors. "Today, yes." Ethan turned. Two federal agents entered first, wearing navy jackets with block letters across the front. Behind them came more agents, then building security, then men carrying folded cardboard evidence boxes. The lobby seemed to tilt. One of the agents approached him. Mid-40s, calm face, gray eyes, a woman with a badge clipped to her belt and a file in her hand. Ethan Caldwell. Ethan straightened automatically. "I need to call my attorney. You can do that after we execute the warrant." She opened the file and held up the papers. "I'm Special Agent Mara Vance. We have authorization to search your office, your home devices, your personal ledgers, and all records tied to Beaumont Holdings, Crescent Harbor Consulting, and 7 offshore entities listed here." Ethan could not feel his fingers. "This is a mistake." Agent Vance did not blink. "People say that often. I manage legitimate portfolios. Then the records should comfort you." The agents moved past him toward the elevators. This time the doors opened for them. Ethan stepped after them, but a second agent blocked his path. "You're not going upstairs. This is my office. Not this morning." People had begun to gather near the lobby entrance. A junior analyst from the 32nd floor slowed with a coffee cup in hand. A receptionist covered her mouth. Someone whispered his name. Ethan felt their eyes, and for the first time in years he understood what it meant to be watched without control. His phone buzzed. He looked down. Duke Beaumont. The name hit him harder than the warrant. The Beaumont brothers were not the sort of men who sent polite emails when their money froze. They owned warehouses near the river, trucking companies that lost manifests, bars where men went in loud and came out silent. Ethan had spent 3 years convincing himself they needed him too much to hurt him. Now their money was caught in federal light. He did not answer. Agent Vance glanced at the screen. Someone important. Ethan slipped the phone into his pocket. My lawyer. Her eyes said she knew he was lying. By 8:40, news vans were outside. By 9:15, Ethan's face was on local television. By 10, every client he had ever bragged about was calling someone else. By noon, he was standing outside the federal building, released, after questioning his tie gone, his hair ruined by humidity, his face pale beneath a swarm of cameras. Mr. Caldwell, are you connected to Beaumont Holdings? Did you launder money for organized crime? Did your firm know? Are you cooperating with investigators? Ethan pushed through them without answering. A black sedan waited at the curb, but it was not his driver behind the wheel. It was a rideshare he had ordered after discovering his corporate car account had been suspended. His platinum card declined twice. He paid with a backup debit card he had not used in years. The driver did not speak. That was the worst part. At 1:15, Ethan reached his penthouse. The elevator opened onto a private foyer. Madison Lane stood near the door in oversized sunglasses, a cream coat, and travel clothes that looked expensive enough to be photographed. 3 designer suitcases waited beside her. Ethan stopped. What are you doing? Madison did not remove her sunglasses. Leaving. He let out a disbelieving laugh. Madison, not now. Especially now. He stepped toward her. She stepped back. That stung more than he expected. This is temporary, he said. It is a misunderstanding. My card declined at brunch. He stared at her. That is what you care about. She finally took off the sunglasses. Her eyes were cold, but not shocked. Ethan realized with a strange drop in his stomach that she had always been waiting for the money to decide who he was. That is what you offered, she said. I offered you a life. You offered access, tables, trips, photographs. You did not offer loyalty, Ethan. You offered a brand. He grabbed her wrist. Do not walk away from me. Madison looked down at his hand, then back up at his face. Let go. His fingers tightened for half a second. Then he saw fear in her eyes and behind that disgust. He released her. She picked up her purse. The Beaumonts called my manager. Ethan's blood went cold. What did they say? They asked where you were. I told them I didn't know. Madison. I also told them not to contact me again. You stupid girl. Her face hardened. There he is. The elevator opened behind her. A bellman stepped out to collect her bags. Ethan looked from the man to Madison, humiliated by the presence of a witness. You can't just leave. Yes, Madison said, I can. That is the difference between us. I know when a sinking man is still trying to look like a yacht. She slid her sunglasses back on. Do not call me. Do not mention me. Do not use my name in whatever statement your attorney writes. The elevator doors closed with her inside. Ethan stood alone in the private foyer, surrounded by marble silence and the echo of every woman he had taught himself to underestimate. Across town, Harper sat cross-legged on her sofa in a soft gray robe, Roman's jacket folded carefully over the armchair beside her. She had not slept much. The news played low on her television. At first, she only watched because Tessa texted her 17 question marks and a link. Then Ethan's face appeared on the screen. Harper sat forward. The headline read, Local Wealth Manager Questioned in Federal Money Laundering Probe. Her living room went very still. A reporter stood outside Crescent Capital Management, speaking in the urgent tone people used when scandal had a luxury address. Harper turned up the volume. Federal authorities executed search warrants this morning connected to multiple offshore entities and suspected laundering activities involving Beaumont Holdings. Ethan Caldwell, a senior wealth manager at Crescent Capital, was seen leaving federal offices earlier today. No formal charges have been announced at this time. Harper's hand found her throat. She watched footage of Ethan pushing past cameras, his face drawn and furious. He looked nothing like the man who had whispered in her ear the night before. He looked exposed. Her phone rang. Tessa. Again. Harper answered without looking away from the screen. Tell me you are watching. I'm watching, Harper. I know. Did Roman do this? Harper stared at the headline. I don't know. Do you want the polite friend answer or the honest friend answer honest? That man absolutely did this, or he opened a door and let the wolves already waiting inside. Harper's stomach tightened. He said Ethan had problems before last night. Well, apparently the problems had paperwork. Harper muted the television. I don't know how to feel. You don't have to pick one feeling. I hated him last night. That is allowed. But seeing him like this, also allowed. Harper looked at Roman's jacket. It's too much power, Tessa. Yes. He looked at Ethan, and by morning federal agents were at his office. Also, yes, that should terrify me. It does terrify you. Harper's voice softened, but part of me feels relieved. Tessa was quiet. Then she said relief does not make you cruel. Ethan spent years making you feel powerless. Of course it does something to see power finally point the other way. Harper closed her eyes. I don't want to become someone who needs a man like Roman to feel safe. Then don't. By remembering that you walked back into that ballroom on your own feet. Harper opened her eyes. On the muted television, Ethan's face stared out from a still frame caught mid-panic. I did, yes. Roman opened a door, you walked through it. The words settled slowly. After the call ended, Harper turned off the television. The silence that followed felt cleaner but heavier. She showered. She washed the gala makeup from her face. She stood beneath hot water until her skin warmed and her breathing evened out. When she stepped out, the mirror was fogged. For a while, she did not wipe it. She liked not being forced to look. Then she thought of the sapphire gown, of Ethan saying blue made her look wider, of Roman saying she had worn it like a dare. Harper reached up and cleared the mirror with her palm. Her reflection appeared in a broken oval, bare face, damp curls, soft body wrapped in a towel. No ballroom, no Ethan, no Roman, just her. She looked for the disgust Ethan had taught her to expect. It came but weaker than usual, a tired old ghost. Harper touched the curve of her stomach. I am still here, she whispered. The words were not dramatic. That made them feel true. A knock sounded at the front door. Harper froze. No one came to her apartment unannounced, except Tessa, and Tessa always texted first. She walked quietly to the door and looked through the peephole. No one. Her pulse quickened. She opened the door an inch chain still latched. The hallway was empty. On the floor sat a long ivory box tied with black silk ribbon. Harper stared at it, then at the empty hall. She unlatched the chain, picked up the box, and carried it inside. It was heavier than she expected. She placed it on her dining table and stood over it with both hands on her hips. No, she said to the box. The box said nothing. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text appeared. Open it, little fire. Harper's breath caught. She should have been angry that he had her number. She was angry, mostly. She typed back. Do you always send mysterious boxes to women after threatening their exes? The reply came quickly. Only when the woman leaves my jacket folded with military precision instead of wearing it. Harper looked toward the armchair, then at the windows. She typed, Are you watching my apartment? Numb. A second message followed. My driver noticed when he delivered the box. I asked whether you looked safe. He said you looked suspicious of expensive packaging. Despite herself, Harper smiled. That is because expensive packaging usually means expensive trouble, Roman replied. Accurate. Harper looked at the box again. "What are you doing?" she whispered. She pulled the ribbon loose. Inside lay layers of dark tissue paper. She pushed them aside and went still. A dress, crimson velvet, deep, rich, and impossible to ignore. Harper lifted it carefully from the box. The fabric poured over her hands like warm wine. It was not the kind of dress department stores pretended was designed for curves while secretly punishing them. This had shape, structure, intention, a bodice that would support instead of squeeze, a waist made to honor her body, not apologize for it, a skirt with a slit that suggested movement, not display. It was bold, it was beautiful, it was terrifying. An envelope rested at the bottom of the box. Her name was written on it in black ink. Harper opened it. "You wore blue like a woman trying to remember her courage. Tonight, wear red like a woman who knows it never left. Dinner is at 8. My driver will wait downstairs." R.H. Harper read the note twice, then a third time. Her phone rang before she could decide whether to be furious, flattered, or both. "Tessa, I just got a call from reception at the office," Tessa said. "Please tell me Roman Hawthorne did not send you a dress." Harper looked at the crimson velvet in her hands. "Roman Hawthorne sent me a dress." Tessa groaned. "Absolutely not. I didn't say I was going." "You are holding the dress, aren't you?" Harper looked down. "That is not evidence. That is evidence with sleeves. It doesn't have sleeves. Worse." Harper sat slowly at the table, the dress pooled across her lap. "Tessa, it's beautiful." "I'm sure it is. That is how bait works." He said dinner. Of course, he said dinner. Men like that do not say hello. "I may be a criminal empire with cheekbones. Please join me for a morally complex evening." Harper laughed, then pressed her fingers to her mouth. The laughter felt unfamiliar in her apartment after such a long night. Tessa softened. "Do you want to go?" Harper looked toward the mirror across the room. She imagined herself in the red dress. Not hiding, not shrinking, not asking the world to approve before entering it. "I don't know." Wrong answer. Harper sighed. "Yes." Tessa was quiet for 2 seconds. "Then we talk safety." Harper smiled faintly. "Always practical, always alive. Send me the address. Share your location. Text me when you arrive, when you sit down, when you leave, and if he says anything that sounds like a threat but romantic. With Roman, that may be every sentence. Then type fast." After they hung up, Harper carried the dress into her bedroom and hung it on the closet door, where the sapphire gown had hung the night before. Red replaced blue. Not softer, not safer, but somehow clearer. Harper stood before it for a long time. She thought of Ethan's face on the news. Madison leaving. Federal agents carrying boxes. Roman's dark eyes outside the hotel. Tessa's voice telling her she had walked on her own feet. Then she touched the velvet. For years, Ethan had made attention feel like danger. Roman made danger feel like attention. Harper was not foolish enough to confuse that with safety, but she was tired of living as if safety meant never being seen. At 7:45 that evening, she stepped out of her building wearing the crimson dress. The driver, waiting by the black car, lowered his gaze respectfully as if she were someone important before anyone told him so. Harper paused at the curb, feeling the warm night gather around her. For the first time all day, she did not think of Ethan first. She thought of herself. Then she stepped into the car. The door closed with a soft, heavy sound, and for a moment, Harper sat in the hush of black leather and tinted glass, listening to her own heartbeat. The driver pulled away from the curb without asking for an address. New Orleans moved around her in ribbons of gold and shadow. Restaurants glowed under striped awnings. Couples hurried through the humid evening. Music drifted from open doors, brass and piano, and voices made smoky by whiskey and want. Harper looked down at the crimson velvet spread over her lap. The dress fit like it had known her before she did. It did not pinch her waist into someone else's idea of acceptable. It did not flatten her chest, or hide her hips, or beg forgiveness for her softness. It held her, honored her, turned the body Ethan had mocked into something impossible to ignore. That made her feel powerful. That made her feel afraid. Her phone buzzed. "Tessa, location is on. Text me when you arrive. Also, if he owns a dungeon, leave." Harper almost laughed. No dungeon yet. Yet is doing too much work in that sentence. Harper smiled and set the phone in her lap. The car turned away from the garden district and carried her toward the river. The city changed as they drove. The streets grew narrower, older, more secretive. Iron balconies leaned over wet stone sidewalks. Lanterns burned beside doorways. Somewhere nearby, a woman sang in a voice so rich it made the night feel bruised. Finally, the car stopped behind a restored brick building near the riverfront. There was no sign outside. No crowd. No bright entrance. Just a narrow door, painted black, and two men in dark suits standing beneath a gas lamp. One of them opened Harper's door. "Miss Monroe." His voice was respectful, not friendly. Harper stepped out, her heels touching the pavement. The man lowered his gaze, once not in dismissal, but in acknowledgement. That small gesture did something strange to her. For years, Ethan had made her feel like a woman people tolerated. Roman's world, violent and shadowed as it was, treated her like someone expected. She was not sure which frightened her more. The guard led her inside. The building's interior was quiet and dim, with polished floors, exposed brick walls, and the faint scent of candle wax and dark wood. They passed through a private elevator that opened only after the guard pressed his thumb to a black panel. The elevator rose in silence. Harper watched the numbers climb. Her reflection stared back from the brushed metal doors. Red dress, dark curls, gold earrings. Lips painted deep berry, eyes steady enough to fool strangers. The doors opened onto a rooftop dining room enclosed by glass. New Orleans stretched beneath her. The Mississippi River moved like black silk under the moon. The city lights shimmered in the distance. Far below, music and traffic and life continued, softened by height into something almost tender. A table for two waited near the glass wall. White linen, tall candles, silverware polished bright enough to catch firelight. Roman Hawthorne stood beside the table. He wore black again, but without the jacket this time. His shirt was open at the throat sleeves, buttoned at the wrist, signet ring gleaming on his right hand. He looked less like a guest, and more like the reason the room existed. When he saw her, he went still. Not dramatically, not like a man performing desire. Still in the way a predator freezes when the world offers something worth patience. Harper stepped out of the elevator. Roman did not speak at first. His gaze moved over her once slowly, but not with Ethan's cold measurement. Roman looked at her as though every curve had been placed there with intention, and he had no intention of insulting the artist by pretending not to notice. Harper's skin warmed. "You sent the dress," she said. "I did. You knew it would fit. I had help. Should I ask from whom? No." She studied him. "That answer should make me angrier. It still can." She took another step toward him. "Do you always arrange things without asking?" Roman's eyes remained on hers. "Often." "Roman?" His expression shifted at her tone. "I will learn when not to." The answer was so plain that it stole the sharp edge from her next breath. He pulled out her chair. Harper paused, then sat. Roman waited until she was settled before taking the seat across from her. Not beside her. Across. Close enough to be intimate, far enough to give her room. A waiter appeared without a sound and filled their glasses with water, then wine. Harper noticed that Roman did not touch his glass until she touched hers. control, she thought. Every gesture, every pause, every silence. This man lived by control. The question was whether he could let anyone else have it. For several minutes, dinner unfolded with a quiet elegance that seemed almost unreal after the chaos of the last 24 hours. The first course was oysters on crushed ice with lemon and pepper. Then warm bread with whipped butter and sea salt. Then rich pasta with shrimp herbs and a sauce that tasted like cream fire in the Gulf. Roman asked questions, not easy ones, not the sort of questions men asked when they were waiting for their turn to talk. He asked why she chose public relations. Harper took a sip of wine and looked out at the river. Because people believe the first story they hear. Roman waited. She continued. I wanted to learn how stories are shaped, how damage is contained, how people survive the worst things said about them. Is that what you do for clients sometimes? And for yourself? Harper smiled faintly, poorly. Roman's mouth curved, but his eyes stayed serious. You seemed skilled last night. At what standing while wounded? Her fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. That is not a skill I wanted. No, the useful ones rarely are. She looked back at him. You speak like a man who has collected wounds and named them assets. He leaned back slightly, studying her. Maybe I have. Does it work? No. His honesty landed softly. Harper looked down at her plate. She wanted to ask Josh about his mother again, about the woman with red lipstick and pearls who had filled rooms before entering them. But something in Roman's face told her grief was a locked door, and tonight he had already opened more than he liked. So she asked something else. Did you ruin Ethan? Roman did not pretend to misunderstand. I exposed him. That is not the same as no. No, he said, it is not. Harper set her fork down. He looked destroyed on the news. He built his life on stolen money and borrowed importance. Destruction was already inside the walls. And you pushed, I opened a window. The answer was calm. Too calm. Harper looked at him for a long moment. Do you understand how terrifying that sounds? Yes. Do you care? Roman's eyes stayed on hers. About terrifying him, no. About terrifying me. The room went quiet. Below them the river moved in darkness. Roman folded his hands on the table. Yes. Harper believed him. She did not know why. Maybe because he did not soften his face to sell the answer. Maybe because men who lied to women usually rushed toward comfort, and Roman did not rush toward anything. You told me last night I should be scared of you, she said. You should. That is not usually how men try to win women over. I am not usually trying. The words slipped into the candlelight between them. Harper felt them. She tried not to. And now Roman's gaze dropped briefly to her mouth, then rose again. Now I am trying not to take more than you offer. Her breath changed. The waiter returned to clear their plates, and the interruption saved her from answering too quickly. Roman said nothing until they were alone again. Harper looked at the skyline. I do not want to trade one man's control for another's. Roman went very still. She forced herself to continue. Ethan never grabbed me in public. He never screamed where people could hear. He controlled me with smaller things, comments, corrections, suggestions that sounded like care. Roman's jaw tightened. Harper. No, let me say this. He stopped. She looked at him then. If I am here, it is because I chose to come, not because you sent a dress, not because your driver waited, not because you scare people who scare me. Roman's voice was low. I know. Do you? Yes. She searched his face. If I asked you to stop, would you? With Ethan. With anyone. With me. Around me. For me. Roman did not answer immediately. That made the moment feel real. Finally, he said, "My first instinct would be to refuse." Harper's heart dipped. Roman continued, "Then I would remember that you are not territory." Her throat tightened, and I would stop. She looked at him, studying every line of his face. "You promise, I promise." The answer was quiet, heavy, not romantic in the easy way. Binding. Harper leaned back slowly. "That may be the first thing you have said tonight that actually comforts me." Roman's eyes warmed by a fraction. "I will try not to make a habit of it." A laugh escaped her. This one did not break. Roman watched it with the same reverence he had shown when she entered in red. The evening softened after that. They spoke of safer things for a while. Food, work, the city after rain. Harper told him about Bennett and Vale, about Tessa, about the Whitaker account, and how much it mattered. Roman listened as if every detail entered a file he intended never to misplace. When dessert arrived, a dark chocolate tart with cream and cherries, Harper hesitated for the smallest second before reaching for her fork. Roman noticed. Of course he did, but he did not comment. He simply took a bite of his own dessert first and said, "This is worth whatever sin they used to make it." Harper looked at him. Then she took a bite. Chocolate melted on her tongue, rich and bitter and sweet. For some reason, that almost made her cry. She blinked quickly and focused on the city lights. Roman's voice came softly. "Did he make you afraid of wanting things?" Harper swallowed. "Yes, all things most." And now she looked at the tart, then at him. "Now I am deciding what I am hungry for." Something dark and pleased moved through Roman's eyes. Before he could answer, a crash sounded beyond the private doors. Harper stiffened. Roman did not move, but the room changed around him. The softness vanished. His eyes turned black and cold. A second crash followed, then a muffled shout. Roman rose. The doors burst open. Two of Roman's men dragged Ethan Caldwell into the dining room. He looked nothing like the man from the gala. His suit was wrinkled. His hair was damp with sweat. One cheek was bruised purple near the bone. His mouth was split at the corner, and his eyes were wild with panic. He stumbled forward, caught himself on one knee, then looked up. When he saw Harper, he froze. The red dress did what the sapphire gown had begun. It made her impossible to rewrite. For a moment, Ethan could only stare. Then desperation broke through. "Harper." Roman's voice cut across the room. "Careful." Ethan flinched. One of the guards shoved him lower. Roman did not look at Harper yet. His gaze stayed on Ethan. "How did he get upstairs?" The taller guard answered. "Service entrance. Tried to bribe a kitchen porter. Then he tried to run when we recognized him." Roman's face showed no surprise. "Of course he did." Ethan lifted both hands. Please, just listen." Roman took one step toward him. Ethan crawled back instinctively. Harper stood. Roman turned his head at the movement. She held his gaze and lifted one hand. Not much, just enough. "Let me." Roman's eyes stayed hard for a second longer. Then he stepped back. Ethan saw it happen and some foolish hope lit his face. "Harper, please. You have to tell him to stop." Harper looked at the man on the floor. The man who once adjusted her meals with a smile. The man who made her afraid of mirrors. The man who stood in a ballroom and called her too big to love because she had dared to arrive whole. Now he was on his knees in front of her and she felt the old pain waiting for triumph. It did not come. What came was exhaustion. Stop what she asked. Ethan swallowed hard. "The Beaumonts. They think I stole from them. Did you?" His eyes darted toward Roman. "That is complicated." Harper's voice stayed calm. "No. Did you?" Ethan's face crumpled with anger and fear. "I moved money. Everyone moves money, so yes. I did what I had to do. You did what made you rich. You do not understand these people." Harper glanced at Roman. I am beginning to. Ethan dragged himself forward until one of Roman's men pressed a hand to his shoulder. He stopped, breathing hard. They are outside my building. They followed me. They called my mother Harper. My mother. They said if they do not get their money back, they are going to take payment another way. For a moment the room was silent except for Ethan's ragged breathing. Harper felt a flicker of pity. Not love. Not guilt. Pity. It surprised her how small it was. Ethan saw it and reached for it like a drowning man. You are a good person, he said. You always were. You would not let them kill me over a mistake. Harper's eyes hardened. A mistake, I was scared. You were cruel. I was insecure. You were cruel. He flinched. She took one slow step closer. Do you know what is strange, Ethan? He stared up at her. For years I thought you saw something ugly in me. Something everyone else was too polite to name. His lips parted. But last night, when you said it again, I finally heard it differently. You were not describing me. You were trying to control the room. You were trying to make me feel small because you felt small standing near me. Ethan shook his head, tears gathering in his eyes. No, Harper, I loved you. No, she said. You needed me grateful. That is not love. His face broke. Roman watched from behind her, silent as a loaded gun. Ethan pressed his hands together. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I was stupid. You were always better than me. Everyone saw it. My colleagues, my father, even Madison. You could walk into a room and make people feel like you actually saw them. I hated that. I hated that you did not have to be thin or polished or perfect to matter. Harper's breath caught, but she did not look away. Ethan continued, words spilling now. I thought if I made you doubt yourself, you would stay. I thought if you believed no one else would want you, you would be mine. A soft sound left Harper, not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. There it was. The truth at last. Not beautiful, not healing, but clean. You made my body a cage because you were afraid I would walk out of yours. Ethan lowered his head. I was wrong. Yes, Harper said. You were. He looked up again, desperate. Then help me. Harper stared at him for a long time. The candles flickered in the glass. The river moved beyond them. Roman remained still, letting the moment belong to her. Harper felt the strange weight of power settle into her hands. She could ask Roman to ruin Ethan further. She could ask for mercy. She could ask for blood money, exile silence. For 3 years, Ethan had made her feel powerless. Now his fate seemed to hang in the air before her. But the longer she looked at him, the clearer something became. She did not want him. Not his suffering, not his apology, not his fear, not even his regret. She wanted the years he took from her, and he could not give those back. Roman stepped closer, his voice low. Say the word, Harper. Ethan looked between them. Please. Roman's eyes stayed on Harper. His fate is yours tonight. Harper turned toward Roman. There was no softness in his face now, only readiness. A terrible devotion, the kind that could make a woman feel worshipped if she forgot to stay awake. She understood then why Roman was dangerous beyond his money, his men, his name. He could make revenge feel like love. Harper looked back at Ethan. No. Ethan's face collapsed in relief too soon. Roman's brow shifted. No, Harper kept her eyes on Ethan. I do not want his life in my hands. Ethan's relief faltered. I do not want his death on my conscience. I do not want to wake up tomorrow and realize I am still carrying him, only in a darker way. She stepped closer to Ethan, close enough that he had to tilt his head back to look at her. You do not belong to me. Your punishment does not belong to me. Your fear does not belong to me." Her voice trembled once, then steadied. "And I do not belong to you." Ethan began to cry. "Harper." She bent slightly, not to comfort him, but to make sure he heard every word. "You called me too big to love. You were wrong. I was never too big. You were too small to hold what you asked for." His mouth twisted with pain. "For 3 years I let your voice live in my mirror. I let you turn meals into math and dresses into warnings. I let you make my softness feel like failure. But you do not get my body anymore. You do not get my shame. You do not get the soft version of my name." She straightened. "You get nothing else from me." The room held still. Roman looked at her as if something inside him had knelt. Harper turned to him. "Let the law take him. Let the Beaumonts chase their own dead outside your walls. But not here. Not because of me." Roman studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "As you wish." The words were quiet, but every man in the room moved as if they had been shouted. Roman turned to his guards. "Take him to federal custody. Make sure the Beaumont brothers know he left my roof alive and empty-handed." Ethan sagged. "Thank you. Harper, thank you." Harper's face did not soften. "Do not thank me. I did not save you. I released myself." The guards pulled him to his feet. As they dragged him toward the doors, Ethan looked back once. Harper did not look away. The doors closed behind him. The silence that followed was enormous. Harper felt it rush into the space Ethan had occupied. Her knees weakened suddenly, and she gripped the back of the nearest chair. Roman was there in an instant, but he stopped before touching her. "May I?" The question nearly undid her. She nodded. His hand settled at her waist, firm and careful. Not taking. Steadying. Harper closed her eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek. Roman caught it with his thumb. "Are you sorry?" he asked. "No. Are you afraid?" She opened her eyes and looked at him. "Yes." His face tightened. "Of me sometimes." He did not flinch. "Good." Harper's mouth curved weakly. "You said that before, and I meant it." She searched his face. "Why is that good?" "Because I never want you blind with me." Outside the glass, the city lights shimmered below. Roman's voice lowered. "I am not a safe man, Harper. I know. I will always want to answer insult with ruin. I know that too. I will want to protect you in ways that look too much like possession." Her breath caught. He continued, "So you will have to remind me." Loudly, if necessary. Harper looked at his hand at her waist, then at his face. "And if you do not listen," Roman's eyes darkened, "then you walk away." The words were simple, but they cost him something. She could see that. "Would you let me?" His jaw flexed. "No." Harper's expression changed. Roman closed his eyes for half a second as if fighting the worst part of himself into silence. Then he opened them. "Yes," he said, "I would let you." The correction mattered more than perfection would have. Harper stepped closer. "You are learning. I dislike it. I can tell." His mouth curved faintly. She rested one hand against his chest. His heartbeat was steady beneath her palm, strong and controlled. "I do not need a king to tell me I am worthy," she said. "No, but I do like when you say it." Roman's hand tightened at her waist. "You are worthy." Her eyes stung again. Again. Something fierce and tender moved across his face. "You are worthy, Harper Monroe. Before me. After me, without me." That reached the deepest place, the place Ethan had hollowed out and left cold. Harper rose onto her toes and kissed him. Roman did not take over at first. He held himself still, letting her choose the shape of it. His restraint trembled beneath her hands. Then she moved closer, and his control broke carefully. His mouth claimed hers with heat, but not force. One hand cupped her jaw. The other stayed at her waist, grounding her as the room seemed to tilt around them. He tasted like wine smoke and restraint losing a beautiful war. Harper kissed him until the last echo of Ethan's voice faded into something she could no longer hear. When she pulled back, Roman rested his forehead against hers. "Little fire," he murmured. This time Harper smiled. "I feel it now." Days later, Harper walked into Bennett and Vale wearing a cream suit tailored to her body and red lipstick bright enough to start rumors. The office went quiet for half a second. Then Tessa looked up from her desk and grinned. "Well," she said, "somebody woke up expensive." Harper handed her a coffee. "Somebody got 3 hours of sleep and a call from Margaret Whittaker at 7 this morning." Tessa froze. "No. Yes, say words. The Whittaker Foundation wants a full proposal by Friday. Margaret requested me personally." Tessa stood so fast her chair rolled back. I knew that woman had taste. Harper smiled, but this time she did not make it small. In the conference room, the partners listened while Harper laid out the strategy. Reputation repair, community investment, transparent messaging, real accountability before polished statements. She spoke clearly, without rushing, without apologizing, without checking every face for permission to continue. When one senior partner interrupted her twice, Harper waited, let him finish, then said I was not done. The room went still. Tessa nearly choked on her coffee. The partner blinked. Harper continued. By noon, the proposal was hers. By evening, she stood outside the office building as the sky turned violet over New Orleans. Her phone buzzed. Roman. Dinner. Harper looked at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back. Ask properly. 3 dots appeared. May I take you to dinner tonight, Harper? She smiled. Better. His reply came quickly. I am teachable under extreme conditions. Harper laughed out loud on the sidewalk. A black car waited at the curb, but Roman was not inside it. He stood beside the rear door jacket, buttoned dark eyes on her, looking entirely out of place among office workers and evening traffic, and entirely certain he belonged wherever she decided to stand. He opened the door. Harper stopped in front of him. You know, she said, I can open my own doors. I know. But you like doing it. I do. She studied him, then stepped closer and kissed his cheek. Then you may. Roman's eyes warmed. As you wish. Harper slid into the car, but this time she did not feel carried away from herself. She felt met. Outside, New Orleans glowed with heat music, danger, and life. The city had not become safer. Roman had not become softer. Ethan had not become innocent. None of the world had remade itself into a place where women were never wounded. But Harper Monroe sat in the back of that black car, wearing red lipstick and a body she no longer treated like an apology. Ethan had called her too big to love. He had been wrong. She was too much for a small man's cruelty, too bright for borrowed shame, and too alive to keep shrinking. Roman took her hand in the dark. Harper let him. Not because she needed saving. Because she had chosen where to place her fire.